Hello students, today I will start a new chapter, that is chapter 4, Human Development. And in this presentation I will cover meaning of development, lifespan perspective on development, growth, development, maturation and evaluation, and then factors influencing development. Now see, if you look around, you will notice that from birth onwards, changes of various kinds are taking place in an individual's life. Yes, do you agree? And which continue even during old age. And over a span of time, human grows and develops, learns to communicate, walk, count, and read and write. Not only that, but the individual also learns to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, and also makes friends, then goes through puberty, gets married, rears children, and grows old. Now, even though we differ from each other, we share some of the common things. And there, most of us learn to walk by the first year and talk by the second year. Yes? Now, let us go through the meaning of development so that it becomes more clear to understand. And once again, I'm telling you that from conception until the moment of death, we not only change physically, but also change in the way we think, the way we use language, and develop social relationships. And changes are not confined to any one area of a person's life. They occur in the person in an integrated manner. Okay. Now here is the definition of development, which you can note it down. Development is the pattern of progressive, orderly, and predictable changes that begin at conception and continue throughout life. Now it is saying that development is the pattern of progressive change. Why it is progressive? Because we progress from one year to another in an orderly manner. We are not attaining a year of 2 or 3 without attaining the first year. Yes? So in that way, we are progressing. Then predictable changes, because see, it is very predictable of the changes that a child, as soon as the uh, child is born, he or she doesn't start to walk or run or talk. We know that at what age and in what month the child will be doing, what are the milestones the child will be reaching. Yes, that is why it is predictable. So development as such is the pattern of progressive, orderly and predictable changes that begin at conception and continue throughout life. It is very normal for a person to attain puberty at the age of 13 or 14. But if someone doesn't know about it, he or she will get shocked at first and then will keep on thinking that it is not normal. But that is very common to every individual, and as such we can also say that that is also predictable. Yes? Then development, since it begins at conception and it continues throughout our life, it is influenced by an interplay of biological, cognitive and socio-emotional processes. When we are calling it as interplay, that means the biological factor or the cognitive processes or the socio-emotional processes, it is not having influence just one at a time, but it is an interplay of all the three processes. Now, when we call biological process, we mean that development due to genes transmitted from parents, and we can see it as height, weight, brain, heart, and lungs development. Okay, and when we are talking about cognitive processes, we mean that it relates to mental activities which are associated with the processes of knowing and experiencing, such as thought, perception, attention, problem solving, etc. etc. And the third is the socio-emotional processes. It refers to changes in an individual's interactions with other people. That means the changes in emotions and in personality. So a child's hug to his or her mother, a young child's affectionate gesture to her or his sibling, or an adolescent's sorrow at losing a match are all reflections of socio-emotional processes which are deeply involved in human development. It is important to remember that the biological, cognitive, and social processes, socio-emotional processes are interwoven, since these processes influence changes in the development of the individual as a whole throughout the human lifespan. It is not like that in one year, in the first year, only the biological processes will influence development. In the second year, only the cognitive processes will work. And in the third, only the social emotional processes will be having an influence in the development. It is not like that. But it all the three processes goes hand in hand and it goes together. Next, let's see some lifespan perspective on development. There are certain assumptions made in the study of development according to the lifespan perspective, that is LSP. Let's see one by one what are those. First is development is lifelong. That means development takes place across all age groups, starting from conception to old age. Since the time a child takes its shape, takes its form in the womb itself, womb of the mother, the brain starts developing. In the womb itself, the baby starts to hear. He or she, the baby develops, the auditory development is there. Okay, the sense of hearing is there developing inside the womb. Then it includes both gains and losses, which interact in dynamic ways throughout the lifespan. Dynamic ways means change in one aspect goes with changes in another. Second, the various processes of human development, that is biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional, are interwoven in the development of a person throughout the lifespan. This I have already discussed in the previous slide. Third, development is multidirectional. It is not unidirectional, not one directional, it is multidirectional. Now, some dimensions or components of a given dimension of development may increase while others show decrement. For example, the experiences of adults may make them wiser and guided decisions. They can make their own decisions. However, with an increase in age, what happens is that what decreases over there? The performance. Hmm? The performance is likely to decrease on tasks which require speed, such as running. As we age, our pace, our speed, it gradually decreases. And fourth, development is highly plastic, that is within person. Within a person, there is modifiability in psychological development. That means one can modify one's psychological development. And of course, psychological development, it is not same to all individuals. The thought or the ideas that I have, you might not have the same thing. In your mind, your psychological development might be different. So that is why we can modify the psychological development. We can acquire certain kind of attitudes, but of course that can be changed. We learn certain things, again it can be changed. That is why it is regarded that development is highly plastic. But to be important point to note is that plasticity varies among individuals. It is not same to all the individuals. Fifth, development is influenced by historical conditions. Now, for instance, or for example, the career orientation of school students today. It is very different from those students who were in schools 50 years ago. Or maybe there were no career orientation only back then in 50 years ago. Yes or no? So, if we take the current pandemic situation, you will see that this is a historical condition right now. So, people who were back then 50 years ago, they did not understand or they did not go through, even we did not go through any kind of pandemic like this earlier. So, our experience now it is very different. Imagine if 50 years after this year, if someone is born in the year 2050, of course they will not understand what happened or how the development was influenced at this current situation. Getting the point? So that is why development is basically influenced by historical conditions as well. Sixth, development is the concern of a number of disciplines. It is a concern of number of disciplines. Here disciplines we are regarding it to the different subjects. Okay. Now different subjects like psychology, anthropology, sociology and neurosciences, they too study human development, but their perspectives are different from that of psychology. And psychology's perspective is different from that of anthropology and sociology or neuroscience. Getting the point? That is why they all have their own different perspectives in order to understand and study development. And seventh, and the last assumption is that an individual responds and acts in a particular context. Now, for example, the life events in everyone's life are not the same, such as that of a parent, accident, earthquake, etc. This affects the course of one's life, as also the positive influences such as winning an award or getting a job. This makes a difference in one's development. If we are getting good work and we are being awarded, we are being praised, of course, we are developing in a positive way. Yes, and we will reach our, or we might achieve greater heights of success. On the other hand, if someone has lost their parent, and if someone meets an accident or is affected by earthquake, that also have their individual response, that is different. The experiences basically it is different, and likewise, of course, the development is also influenced with certain situations and circumstances. Now this affect the course of one's life. Getting the point? People keep on changing with changing contexts. Alright? Now there are certain terms which are used interchangeably often. The words like growth, development, maturation and evolution. What does it mean? Is it same or it is different? Let's go and check. What does it mean? The first, growth. Growth refers to an increase in the size of body parts or the organism as a whole, and it can be measured or quantified. For example, growth in height, weight, etc. Okay. Next term is development. Development is a process by which an individual grows and changes throughout the life cycle. And the term development applies to the changes that have a direction and hold definite relationship with what precedes it, and in turn will determine what will come after. So that means it is predictable. A temporary change caused by a brief illness, for example, is not considered a part of development. Alright? So development, we can say it is permanent change. It is not a temporary change. And all changes which occur as a result of development are not of the same kind. So changes in size, that is physical growth, changes in proportion, that is child to adult, and changes in features, that is disappearance of baby teeth and acquiring new features, are varied in their pace and scope of level. Yes, so development includes growth as one of its aspects, but growth in itself doesn't mean development. Growth is just the increase in the size of body parts or the organism as a whole. Alright? Then comes maturation. Maturation refers to the changes that follow an orderly sequence and are largely dictated by the genetic blueprint, which produces commonalities in our growth and development. So, for example, most children can sit without support by 7 months of age, stand with support by 8 months, and walk by 1 year. Yes, that is maturation. The child is developing because of the fact that he or she is maturing. Now, once the underlying physical structure is sufficiently developed, proficiency in these behaviors requires environment, and little practice. However, special efforts to accelerate these behaviors do not help if the infant is maturationally not ready. We often hear, no, the bones are mature enough, hmm? The bones have grown mature. So, this process seems to unfold from within. That means following an inner genetically determined timetable that is characteristic of the species. Okay. And last term is evolution. Evolution we already have done in chapter 3. So evolution basically refers to species specific changes. Yes. And natural selection is an evolutionary process that favors individuals or a species that are best adapted to survive and reproduce. Now the evolutionary changes are passed from one generation to the next within a species. That only we know we have done. And evolution proceeds at a very slow pace, and emergence of human beings from great apes took about 14 million years, and it has been estimated that the Homo sapiens came into existence only about 50,000 years ago. All right, so this is how growth, development, maturation, and evolution differs in its meaning. The this words are not same, it doesn't have same meaning. Next, let's see some factors influencing development. And one of the alarming questions that rises is that what causes us to be different from each other but at the same time more like each other? And the answer lies in the interaction of heredity and environment. Now, as we know that we inherit genetic codes from our parents, right, which are in every cell of our body, our genetic codes are alike in one important way, that they contain the human genetic code, not the animals. Yes, and it is because of the human genetic code that a fertilized egg grows into a human baby and cannot grow into an elephant, a bird, or a mouse. Isn't it? And genetic transmission is very complex. Most characteristics that we observe in humans are basically combinations of larger number of genes. Though it is not possible to possess all the characteristics made available to us by our genetic structure, but one can imagine the combinations are produced by 80,000 or more genes accounting for a variety of characteristics and behaviors. Okay, so here we get to know that genetic transmission is very complex. Now, the actual genetic material or a person's genetic heritage is known as genotype. However, not all the genetic material is apparent or distinctly identifiable in our observable characteristics. Yes, so phenotype comes into scene, and phenotype is the way an individual's genotype is expressed in observable and measurable characteristics. You all have already done genotype and phenotype. You all have come across genotype and phenotype in chapter 3 itself. Yes, genotype carrying the genetic materials, and phenotype the external characteristics. Okay, the observable and measurable characteristics that the individual carries from his or her parents, ancestors as well. Okay, so here phenotypes include physical traits such as height, weight, eye, skin color, and many of the psychological characteristics such as intelligence, creativity, and personality. Whereas genes do not exist in isolation, and development occurs within the context of an individual's environment, which makes each one of us a unique person. Alright, nothing much because you already know about genotype and phenotype, and we also know that why it has come into sin, why we are talking about genotype and phenotype over here, because this genotype and phenotype basically makes us different from one another, at the same time more like each other as well. Okay, because of our heredity and environment. First of all, now here heredity has shown us that how we are different from one another. We are different from one another because of this genotype and phenotype. Next, what are the environmental influences? As we already know that heredity and environment makes us different and same at the same time. So what are these environmental influences and how does the environment affect development? Now imagine a child with genotype that predisposes her or him to be introverted. Introverts, you all know what are introverts? Person who doesn't like to socialize much, doesn't like to make friends much. So in an environment that promotes social interaction and extroversion. Okay. So imagine a child with a genotype that predisposes her or him to be introverted is being exposed to an environment that promotes social interaction and extroversion. Now, the influence of such an environment may make the child a little extroverted. It is possible that because of the environment, the introverted child may convert into some little bit of extrovertness, might uh, have a change, bring a change in the child. Now, do you know that parents play an important role in determining the type of environment their child or their children will encounter? Sandra Scar in 1992 believes that the environment parents provide for their children depends to some extent on their own genetic predisposition that we all know. For example, if parents are intelligent and are good readers, they would provide their children with books to read, with a likely outcome that their children would become good readers who enjoy reading. Yes, it happens that if parents are intelligent and a good reader, they will also expect the child to be. Besides, the children themselves choose certain environments based on their genotype. For example, because of their genotype, children may perform well in music or sports, and they will seek and spend more time in environments which will enable them to perform their musical skills. Now, if the child's genotype uh, indicates that the child will be more good or have interest in music and sports, the child will go and seek such environment where the child will get exposure to music and sports. Similarly, an athlete would seek sports related environment. Okay, and these interactions with environment keep changing from infancy through adolescence. And environmental influences are as complex as the genes we inherit. It is very complex. So with this we now get to know that how development is influenced. What are the factors that influence development? First and foremost, it is heredity and environment that influences our development. Now here think about the following examples. If your class prefect is selected on the basis of being academically bright and popular student, do you think it is because of her or his genes or the influence of the environment? You think about it and tell me in the next live session, alright? And second, if a child from a rural area who is very intelligent is not able to get a job because of her or his inability to express herself or himself fluently or handle computers, do you think it is because of genes or environment? Now think about these two examples and let me know why such development and such behavior is seen in these two instances. Alright, thank you.